p.m. Those who would like to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Alderman Billiard. Present. Alderman Hill.
Present.
Alderman Keene.
Present.
Alderman Lancaster.
Present.
Alderman Swatash.
Present.
And Alderman Wilson.
Present.
Thank you, Mayor. We have a quorum.
Item number 2, agenda amendments. Is there anything, Wes?
We will postpone the reading of the ordinance until the next public hearing. It was not sent out in time today, so just to keep things focused on the hearing, it'll be best to do that next time.
Can I get a motion for approval of the agenda?
Make a motion to approve the agenda with the adjustment CA.
I'll second. Okay, we have a first and a second. Alderman Billiard. Yes. Alderman Hill.
Yes.
Alderman Keene.
Yes.
Alderman Lancaster.
Yes.
Alderman Swatash.
Yes.
And Alderman Wilson. Thank you.
Item number 3, consent agenda. Hopefully everybody's had an opportunity to review that. If there are no questions, I look for a motion.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda as written.
Second.
Okay, we have a first and a second. Alderman Billiard. Yes. Alderman Hill.
Yes.
Alderman Keene.
Yes.
Alderman Lancaster.
Yes.
Alderman Swatash.
Yes.
And Alderman Wilson.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 4, current outstanding invoices, drafts, and check paid invoices for September and October 2024.
And there will be one added on this one for $300 to pay a fee for plan review by DNI, which Steve will go into in a minute.
If there are no questions, can I get a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the outstanding invoices, drafts, and check paid invoices for September and October.
A second.
Okay, we have a first and a second. Alderman Billiard.
Yes.
Alderman Hill.
Yes.
Alderman Keene.
Yes.
Alderman Lancaster.
Yes.
Alderman Swatash.
Yes.
Alderman Wilson.
Yes.
Thank you.
Item number 5 is for citizens' input. That's going to be separate then when we get to the hearing regarding the sewer and water rates. So if anybody has any input regarding matters other than that, feel free to step forward and state your name and your address and let your voice be heard. Having seen nobody, we'll close that section. All right, item number 6, ordinance amending the City of Willard Code to authorize certain city officials and employees to speak on behalf of the city on social media in the City of Willard, Missouri.
So this one is really coinciding with several factors, but most notably there's been a case go through James Freed. I think it's made pretty big news in places. Specifically, some of the factors in the case, James Freed made some comments on his Facebook post regarding COVID vaccines way back when. It was on his personal Facebook page and he deleted them. So of course there was some contention about he's acting in an official capacity, shouldn't be able to delete posts. Went to the Supreme Court. They determined that because his page was his private page and he was speaking in a private capacity, he was allowed to do that. So what we're trying to do, we as a city don't really have anything to stipulate what employees can and cannot do with their own social media, what the city can and cannot do with its social media, or setting any guidelines for social media usage. This policy is intended to address that, encouraging staff to speak when they wish to, but to make it clear that it is not an official post if it's not official. It helps protect them, it helps the public to understand when someone's making an opinion versus making an official notification. So it ties things up like that, and you'll see it kind of specifies as a city you can speak on behalf of the city, you cannot, and those expectations that go along with that. Nate had kind of provided some input. He's been watching the cases go through, and this policy is kind of derivative of all the facts of the recent case and other case law.
I have one question. I apologize, I didn't email you because I got sidetracked on something else. I know we're speaking specifically of the city page, but we have a parks page.
Yep.
And so just, does that fall under the same, and just the thought of if Parks doesn't post their own stuff, is that an additional burden upon the three that are allowed to post?
No, I don't think there'll be an additional burden. We are intending to kind of coalesce all our official channels into the new webpage, and then the new webpage will be able to filter out into those areas. So I don't think there'll be any change to what we see on the outlet side, as we in the process. I think the hope is that we will be able to go down a path of a public information also to kind of help bring everything together, bring consistency into the communications, and kind of provide a single source messaging.
Okay, I just want to make sure it wasn't something that we overlooked with this,
No.
with them running a lot of stuff on their pages.
Yeah.
If there are no other questions, Janice, you want to give us the first read?
An ordinance amending the City of Willard Code to authorize certain city officials and employees to speak on behalf of the city on social media in the City of Willard, Missouri.
Thank you. All right, item number 7, public hearing to consider and recommend amendments to the City of Willard Municipal Code Book, Chapter 705, Waterworks System, Section 705.040, Water Rates, and Chapter 710, Sewer Use and Sewer Rates, Section 710.470, Rates. So we'll open up this portion for public input regarding possible sewer and water rate increases. So what I would suggest is somebody wants to come forward, come up to the podium and give us your thoughts. We'd be happy to hear them.
I hope you are. My name's Dave O'Connor. Some people know me, Carolyn. Some may not. I used to be the Public Works Director here for 3 years, back 2016 to 2019. First off, I want to point out I am not here to debate the need for a rate increase. This is not my intent. It's long overdue. The city should have been doing this. They've been absorbing costs that have been passed on to them, specifically in the sewer department, the sewer side. I know that, and it's time they got to start catching up, or else they're going to get buried. So that's not my argument. But I, like quite a few people here, I suspect, have some concerns about the surcharge that's being proposed for those people outside the city. Can someone here explain the purpose of the surcharge? What is the basis of the surcharge?
The way the analyst explained it was in-town residents essentially subsidize some of the outside service, since in-town residents pay additionally on top of their rate. They're paying sales taxes and ad valorem taxes that are unique to in-town residents. There is also the cost of obtaining and maintaining easements and extending service beyond city boundaries that we don't experience within the town.
Okay.
I'm sorry to interrupt. None of us back here can hear.
Can you hear me?
No.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No,
I'll put this on if you
nobody
want.
up there can hear you.
That's not That's for the news channel.
Sorry,
We'll all just try to speak louder. How's that?
Thank
can I turn this thing south?
Sure, absolutely.
Maybe that'd be better,
Absolutely.
because there's people back here wanting to hear me. So you're saying that the people in the city of Willard subsidize the people in the outlying area, the rural area, by paying sales tax?
They pay additional costs that are unique to in-town residents. The analyst had a better explanation for us, so I'm kind of boiling it down.
So those costs that are unique, and I'm assuming property tax being one. Carolyn, does any of the property tax money go towards either the water fund or the sewer fund?
It does help go through, part of maintenance, because we have mowing and different things. Yes.
That's street, that would be the street side.
Yes.
is that yes?
Based on my experience here,
Well,
you have the water fund, you have the sewer fund, and you have the streets and public works. Those are the three parts of public works. Am I right, Carolyn?
there is additional expense for maintenance, for right-of-ways.
For right of
And
ways.
Public Works does absorb, some of that, so too, as well.
Okay.
It's spread across different departments.
And you said it was also for, extending the system?
If we obtain easements, or we maintain easements, or we have to extend service, it tends to be more costly outside of city limits.
Basically, the way I understand the city works is any additions to the system are normally borne by those people, developers who are needing that addition, that extra extension to the system.
Normally, yeah.
Right, and then there are charges,
As I said, I'm just boiling down what the
I
analyst provided.
understand, but this is all important because these people may not know, so if we don't get into specifics.
Yeah.
So, in essence, the city really isn't subsidizing in reality. In 2008, when the city purchased the Meadows water system, Meadows sewer system, okay, they had all this, they knew all this. They bought this system, this is what they bought. At that point in time, those people were already there. I don't believe any of those people there asked the city to come in and buy it.
No.
The city chose to come in and buy it. But now, they're trying to penalize the people out in the outlying area. And let me give you, can somebody, well, you gave me some examples. Let me give you some of my own examples. Let's talk sewer. What does the city pay for treating the wastewater in the city of Willard? What do you pay out annually to treat the wastewater in the city of Willard?
Approximately 600,000, isn't it?
648,000 this year.
545,000 in 24, 5.
It is going up each year.
It goes up each year, I agree. How much do you pay to treat the wastewater in the Meadows?
I'm actually gonna correct you, what they just said was 648. So the number that everybody heard was 548.
I just went by the report. I just went by the report that's in that. And I understand that it's going up. Believe me, that's why I'm not arguing the need for a rate increase. And I'm trying to make a point. What do we pay to treat the wastewater in the Meadows? For all these folks who have wastewater out here, what do we pay? Not individually, what does the city pay to treat that wastewater? What's the cost of treating it?
Nobody knows.
We don't exactly know the total cost at this point because we're in the
Bingo.
process of taking the lagoon off of the system because they don't want a lagoon anymore because afraid of leakage.
I understand.
So we are having to build pipe from the city or from the lagoon out to Springfield. Well, at that point, the city will be paying Springfield just like
Just like they do in
right.
for the city of Willard. For the city. So, right, so it will be the same rate. It will be the same rate. It is not now. In fact, the only cost that is incurred in the Meadows to treat wastewater, because it's a pretty passive system, it's a matter of 2 lagoons, a pump, and a sprinkler system. It's land applied, that's what it is. For anybody who doesn't know that, that's what it is. So you have to run a pump, maintain a pump. Well, there's 7 lift stations in the city of Willard, and there's 2 in the Meadows, much smaller lift stations. Seems to me that, based on the 2023 numbers that I saw and that I calculated from, the cost of treating wastewater in the city of Willard per household, and that's just treating it, that's just pumping it to the city of Springfield. The cost is about $19.65 per month per household. Now, what I'm hearing, Carolyn said, we don't know what it costs in the Meadows. It's a very passive system, so relatively little to run that system down there. So we sit here and say it's cost to serve. It's cost to serve. First line in the executive summary, cost to serve. And then we say the additional surcharge is based on, it is in there to account for generally higher costs to serve outside the city. I think what I just told you, if I was wrong, please correct me, the cost to serve is actually quite a bit more in the city. Isn't it? Would that be a fair statement? So the arguments laid out in here for a surcharge are based on these kind of iffy cost to serve. Nowhere in the report was there any data given on cost to serve and the additional cost to serve outside the city.
It was in there under the capital improvements that are necessary to improve and repair the system. You've got years of deferred maintenance that needs to be caught up. Your system out there in the Meadows has asbestos core piping and other things that need to be added. You also need to make a connection to Springfield, which is quite expensive. It's necessary, and it's gonna be put in place. I mean, the plan is already moving. You're looking at what it costs to serve today. The report goes through the next 10 years.
I agree. And we're not doing anything in the city of Willard proper in the next 10 years.
We're gonna do stuff all over the city. There's water towers.
So you're gonna replace a force main going into Springfield. Is that correct?
It has to be upsized, yes.
Yes. So that's how many million?
I think it's about 2.
It's a roughly $3.2 million project.
Okay.
80% funded by congressional earmark.
Which I think you're kind of hitting on it, especially with your experience working for the city. You know, the city's been gradually absorbing more and more cost.
They have.
The trouble with rate studies is, and it's not unique to Willard, cities don't like to do them. Most people generally don't like to do them because they can be quite contentious.
Well,
so they
again,
put them off as long as they can, which results in deferred maintenance. And there are examples of where cities have done that to a point where it's blown up in their face. So,
sure.
You know, at some point, unfortunately, as hard as it all is for us to bear, we all pay rates in the city and outside of the city in this room. You do eventually have to have a reckoning.
I understand that.
Whether we like that or not.
I guess my contention is, as I said initially, I'm not here to dispute the need for a rate increase. That's not my goal. I know this community, inside and outside of the city, needs a rate increase. My concern is that essentially a 50% surcharge being charged to people outside of the city is completely unnecessary and uncalled for, because there's no data to support the contention that is made in here. You have no data.
There is additional data if you go through the study that shows the line that goes from the Meadows to the Springfield, that we do have to run a line there.
Oh, I'm aware of that.
There's easement cost, there's pipe cost,
I know.
there's
It's $1 million
Contracted.
construction project.
It's $1 million construction project, and there's a $3.2 million construction project essentially at the same time in the city, right?
There is,
To serve the city.
there also is a
So we're-
cost to the
We're,
town.
we're 25% and they're 75%. Again, what's the extra cost that, I mean, I'm not saying that the customers out in the rural area are costing any more than anyone in the city.
Again, I think you just need to refer to the deferred maintenance that we're looking at in the capital plan.
What'd you
In the
say?
capital plan pages, it refers to the specific costs going into the system. Again, it's a deferred maintenance issue as much as it is anything else. When
I
I'm
think
saying
this
you
whole
cost
system
it-
needs maintenance.
It does.
It does. There's a lot of maintenance everywhere. I mean,
We're essentially relitigating decisions of the past, which. the
I'm not
past-
litigating. I'm not litigating. I'm asking questions. and-
I understand, but essentially, we're in this position today because of decisions of the past that, I mean, I don't know how many in this
No,
room were part of the
I
decisions.
disagree.
That's not
I
our
disagree.
fault,
I'm
the
not-
county.
I'm
Well,
not
the
up here.
problem comes when the system eventually fails, if the city can't fix it.
But you're asking
There are
us
other
to pay
towns that
double than what the city
asking
did,
us to pay
and
for
we're
it.
not the ones that caused it. We didn't
Understand.
choose to be bought out by
So
Willard.
the
We
thing
don't
is,
want that.
my contention
Make it
is that
fair.
the surcharge in the rural area is excessive, very
Exactly.
excessive. In
But
the case
that
of water,
Then I would like to ask why it is that your board posted that we could voluntarily annex into the city limits and get the so-called city rates. If you're able to do that for us being in your city limits, then why can't you do it now?
And how many people,
It's a fair question.
how many people are in the rural system? How many households? That will be double, almost triple for some. Do y'all even know that?
1,200.
1,200 families,
1,200 homes.
1,200 homes. How many is in city?
64?
So,
now,
you
Okay.
think
Is that about right?
how many?
About 6,500?
if you all was sitting out here where we are, and you were told that we were gonna be strong-armed basically, to pay way more than everyone else. I don't mind paying our fair share. I don't mind paying to keep the maintenance up. But you're gouging us. You're
Exactly.
gouging us.
And furthermore, you guys are making decisions about our rates without us having any representation of any sort. There's no water board for us to put a representative on to get that representation to bring our problems to you. Yet you're going to impose fees upon us just because we live outside of your city limits.
Which we
That
didn't
is
choose
unfair and
to.
unjust to us. And furthermore, with the way you guys worded that we could volunteer, that is coercion. You are basically coercing us to annex into your city limits just so we can get our water bill and sewer bill lower. That is wrong and unjust.
It
And just
is.
because you all mismanaged this city for over 14 years, now we got to pay the consequences for it. That too is unfair and unjust.
Make it fair. That's all we're asking, is to make it fair. And y'all wouldn't like it if we did it to you guys. If you guys were in our seats, paying our bills, you wouldn't like it either. Just make it fair.
I have a question.
Hold on, are you finished, sir?
I just have one more point to make on the water side.
Go ahead.
Again, the city bought the meadows back in '08. None of
None of us
you
were.
folks may not have been involved in any aspect of it. I wasn't either, other than I was a customer out there. The city bought the meadows because their own water system for the city of Willard was rapidly getting to that point where it could not provide sufficient water for any growth. Okay? And you say, well, how do you know that, Dave? What are you, you got a crystal ball? Well, it just so happens, we have this nice document here, although I notice it isn't put out there on the most recent board packets. The water report, I was looking at it, and it goes up through May, so unfortunately the last few months aren't on there, but they don't change that dramatically, do they, Carolyn? You do this thing. So, the water report this year, the average amount pumped from the 2 wells in the city of Willard is just about 3,755,960 gallons. Okay? The average usage in the city of Willard is about 10 million gallons, 10.3 million gallons. Obviously a shortfall. The 2 wells up here couldn't keep up. So they bought the system down there back in '08 with a little foresight of, we can get a bigger storage than we've got. We can get 2 good wells, really good wells down there. Those wells now pump, they pump around 19 million a month, okay? They pump, so 10 million of that goes to the city of Willard, okay? I'm sorry, 6.5 million of that goes to the city of Willard. And 5.4 million, a little under 5.4 million goes to the rural area. So again, you're pumping water down there to support up here. Okay, this is the system you bought. You took the water from it. Now you're trying to take the money from the people who are out there. Okay? So when we talk about cost to serve, it isn't cost to serve. The comments that have been made out here about this being a carrot or a stick to get you to annex in or to commit to annexation, this isn't the first time I've heard them. Unfortunately, this has been thrown around at times in the past, that we'll add a surcharge to get them to annex or commit to annex. Has nothing to do with cost. Has zero to do with cost. It's a stick. That's all it is. Thank you. Any questions?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah.
What would you think would be a fair solution?
I think you look at the overall cost. What do you need? What is the money that is needed by the system as a whole? People here, people there, everywhere. There is no us and them. This is one more of those us and them issues that doesn't need to exist. The people out there are no different than the people in here. The fact that the people here pay taxes, pay property tax, guess what? They get services for those taxes, do they not?
Yes.
They get services for those taxes. So, it should be, everybody should pay the same. The surcharge doesn't need to be there. Why? What's the surcharge for? It doesn't cost any more out there to get easements than it does here. It doesn't, no. Those are just nice ways of increasing revenue. Take the needed revenue, take the bottom line, spread it over the whole, everybody, all the accounts, equally. That's it. It's easy, simple. Everybody pays the same thing. I'll suffer the increase that I have to suffer because I know it needs to be there. If I know it needs to be there. But based on this report that you had developed for you and that you're presenting, and based on what I read in the very first line, it just brings up some questions. I wonder if the report was written to make a point, I want this to say certain things. Sorry, I'm gonna make that statement, but that was the first thing that went through my head. Sounds like somebody had, here's the answer, you write the report to back it up.
No, I would encourage you to review the comments that the analyst made in 923. He explained his background and experience. There was no input in that. I've only been here a few months.
Okay.
I haven't had an opportunity to provide that kind of level of detail.
And your predecessor, I don't know who else may have had input. I just know
There was no predecessor.
from my own experience,
And
those comments have been heard around.
I just want to
City Hall.
reassure you, there's no nefarious stuff. I haven't been here long enough to see any of that.
I hope not. And I'm willing to accept that like I said, the city needs money.
You did also see that we paid him a significant amount of money to come here 3 weeks ago to explain his report in a technical manner, because it's
Sure.
a very technical report. And I didn't see any of these faces.
That's what I heard. Did you put,
We didn't know that.
did you put it on the water bill like you did this?
Let me ask you this. If we paid it, as a city, if we paid him to come back or have another meeting with everybody, would everybody attend?
Sure. I'll come
Yeah,
back.
but we're gonna say the same
You
thing,
tell me,
make
you
it
tell me, and
fair.
I'm here.
Okay.
Make it
But I mean,
fair.
that's the problem
Definitely
is,
something that we will consider. We'll check out the cost and we'll decide if
As
it's
long as it's not between 8 and 5.
this one you
85.
you posted on the bill, okay? The last one, the way I understand it, was posted on Facebook, sorry, I'm not on there. And it was put on your website. Well, I don't peruse your website on a regular
Neither do
basis,
we.
sorry. I did it when I
We
worked
don't live
here.
in Willard.
I don't live in Willard.
Okay. Alright, was that your last point?
I think that's enough.
Okay, sir, do you want to be next, sir?
I have a question for all of y'all too. Are y'all from the rural side of?
Real much, yes.
Anybody from the city here? What are your opinions? Do you think it's right that we're gonna pay way more than y'all do? Should we all have to pay an equal pay? I don't mind doing a surcharge because we are out in the county.
But why?
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 Taking the water from.
They came in.
Exactly, but we have to help maintain what we use. And I don't mind doing that to a certain extent. What y'all are asking is to take some big old dollars out of our pockets. And we don't have as deep of pockets as you seem to think we do. Make it fair. I see y'all looks at us, that you're mad because we're here complaining. You put yourselves in our shoes. We didn't choose Willard. And there's a reason for that. A lot of it was the nonsense that went on last summer with y'all. It was embarrassing. But we stayed out there where we belong, paying our bills. And now we find out y'all gonna drag us in to pay for all the crap that you didn't do when you should have done when we didn't live there. You just seem to think that we were all gonna roll over and not object. I don't mind paying our fair share. But I don't care what your expert come in and said that we need to pay. He's not paying our bills either. Do you think it's fair? Would you pay it if you were us? And tell the truth. Tell the truth. If you all was sitting out here, would you be happy with that amount? Considering that we all didn't choose to be bought out? We didn't choose to live in your community? It was forced on us. But we paid it, and we did it. And now you're dumping on us. Make it fair. I'm appalled that y'all even suggested doing that to a certain portion of your people that's been paying your bills these years. This is how you thank us. Anybody happy with that? Nobody's got anything to say now? I would think you would, being as you guys think we should have said it and rolled over for it. If I'm saying anything that y'all disagree with, please speak up. My whole thing, make it fair. That's it. Anybody else? I'll shut up. Thank you, man.
My name is Jacob Long. I live at 2835 Primrose Circle. I am a disabled veteran. I live on unlimited income, as do most of the people in my neighborhood. What you guys are doing is basically adding insult to injury. We are already paying astronomical rates for our home insurance. We're already paying astronomical rates for personal property taxes. and then you all choose to do this at this particular time, you guys got bad money management, because nobody in their right mind would do projects or finance stuff in the middle of high inflation and everything else. But furthermore, by you doing this, and then telling us that if we annex into your city limits, that we can get the same rates as the city folks, is just unfair. There is none of us here arguing that prices need to go up to cover the cost of maintenance, to cover the cost of improvement. We're not arguing that. What we are arguing, though, is that we're having to pay more than other people are. So therefore, it needs to be fair all the way across the board. Plain and simple. Just pay our fair share, just like you guys. You need to pay your fair share. Okay? I don't want to be in your city limits, and I will not annex into your city limits if I have any choices now.
I'll move first.
And I will not be coerced into moving into your city limits, just so I can save about $400 a year on my utilities. That is improper. And shame on each and every one of you for even suggesting such a thing. Just because you all have bad management is not our fault. Deal with it, fix the situation, and make it fair for the rest of us. That's all I got to say.
Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
So it seems like I may be one of the few people here who do not live out in the Meadows area. I didn't even know where that was until I asked the gentleman. I live up here on Highway Z. If you know where your city limits are, you'll know that I look outside my door and I see the city line. So hearing these debates about cost of service, you cannot tell me that the cost of serving me water is 50% more than the people who live across the street from me and the people who live 3 doors down from me.
Right.
I am with everyone else who thinks that this feels like coercion to be annexed, which honestly, like I'd almost kind of thought about it before it was suggested by the city as an attempt to get me to lower my water bill. Other than I've watched what goes on inside city limits and have been disappointed with the lack of professionalism that I've seen in Willard. But you know, to feel coerced to do that, and for the sake of lowering my water bill, when I know that the service that's being provided to me does not cost 50% more than the people across the street, than the people a few doors down. So that's my comment.
Anybody else?
Are you guys' minds already made up?
Of course they are.
I mean,
They
with
are.
us talking, you're gonna go ahead and pass it anyway.
I think we're all here to learn. I mean, I know that's what I'm listening to. Because no decisions have been made.
Because observing your faces while these 3, 4 people talk, it looked like you didn't give a damn.
Exactly.
Some of you
Thank you,
have really
sir.
smug
Thank you, sir,
looks.
very much.
Can I make a statement?
don't be ugly.
Let's not get
Can
personal.
I say something? I would like for everybody to remember that out of the group of us sitting up here, I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 faces who are all new in the last year. So while there have been a number of issues over the course of the last year, the last 5 years, in the last 5 years, every one of us up here is new. We are all working together to try to rectify the issues that have come over the last however many years. So you ask if our minds are made up. No, we want to work as a community. That's why we're all up here, to be part of the community and to work together to make our community a better place. That takes all of us together.
I'm grateful for your input. Yes, sir, go ahead and get your hand up. Come on up.
Yes, you all
No,
are.
not you yet,
but
his
you-
turn.
Sorry, sir, go
He's
ahead.
coming up next.
You all took on the responsibility and all the mismanagement from all the years past by
No, I
accepting
didn't.
the role that you're in. So to you to say, well, we're all new, is not going to cut it. You took on that responsibility and became part of the board.
But at
So
what
I
point
don't-
does,
I'm not-
do
I'm
we
sorry,
just
that
go,
It's not
let's
like
fix
they're growing a
this?
paycheck.
Right.
No, it's not.
Yeah, I don't take on
I know that.
I don't take on the role of prior mistakes I made. I'm here because of prior mistakes I felt were being made and hoping to make a difference.
It'll make a difference.
I'm working on that.
Well, we're not seeing it though, that's just it. All we're seeing is.
But that's
you
why
guys-
you're here, so that we can hear your input, so we can work on that. We want your input. I know I do, right?
So what would be your suggestion that you think you should do that would make it fair enough that all parties, city and county or rural, could be happy?
That's why we're taking your collective
Well,
input.
and I wanted,
One of the things I would like to ask, and just, again, not wanting to step out of turn, but Mr. O'Connor was up here and said he was Public Works from 2016 to 2019. I had requested from our city administrator, who got the information to me this afternoon, what's the rates for the last 10 years? What is the increase? So, under Mr. O'Connor's reign, it would appear that's when there became a difference between in-town and out-of-town. Why did you do that then?
I did not do it. I have no authority to do that. The
I mean,
Public Works
but
Director.
If you
That was when discussions were had in City Hall about the addition of the extra surcharge.
So you were not, I thought you said you were the Public Works Director.
I was, yes, I was.
So you weren't a part of coming up with making
I was.
that in-town and out-of-town
I
rate?
was present during discussions. I was not the decision maker on those. In fact, if I remember correctly, I would have said there was no validity to those.
Okay, and like I
But
say,
I
I'm just
was
looking
not
at
the
some rates that I don't know
decision
why.
Things are presented, there was a city administrator at the time, interim city administrator at the time. So, again, when you're not the top dog, you're not making the decisions, and he presents to the board. I mean, I guess my question, I see the city administrator here, Public Works Director here. How come?
He's sick.
There you go.
The way I administer, and every county and city administrator is a little different, but your input is as important as anybody else's.
Talk up,
Public
please.
Works. Sure. So, Director of Public Works' opinion to me is as important as anybody else in the room. So, I mean, I don't know what your city administrator was like at the time, but I would like to believe that they would have carried any of your concerns.
He may have listened, but he may have done something different,
May done.
especially when presented to the board.
True.
So
But again,
I'm not
I think
gonna
the
sit
point
here.
here is the board is trying to just listen to these concerns, understand these concerns, and then explore other options if that's what's required. They're just here to make a decision based on the input. And providing that input, I think what Casey's mentioned is also important without being accusatory. Yes, they've been elected, they've taken on the role of all the things that need to be fixed. We have to fix them at some point.
I agree.
We have to, at some point, let the past be the past and
Again, we're
move
just-
forward and say, we've got something to fix. How do we fix it? If this is not the way, at least we've now got a discussion started. This is the most I've seen this room filled since I've been city administrator. This, to me, is great.
That's
I
good.
very rarely see civic engagement, so this is great. This is how conversations get started. This is how communities get fixed and move forward and make things better. So don't feel like nobody's listening. Sometimes silence is the fact that
I think the group
we've got
just
two ears, we're trying to
is
listen.
looking for equity.
Yeah.
We're all the same. We're all the same.
Yes, sir, go ahead.
Okay, today I saw on Google, a statement by the planning and development director, and it referred to the rate increase being comparable to the city of Springfield. My question was, why do we need to be comparable to the city of Springfield on anything when we are a city of 6,000 people?
Because Springfield's paid, we're paying Springfield to treat the freaking sewers.
Yeah, but not the water.
You'll notice the water rate is a far less increase.
Pardon?
The water rate is a far less increase than the sewer increase.
Sorry, I did not hear that.
The water is a far less large increase, the
far smaller.
affordability increases much less for the water.
Okay, well, our water rates with this proposal are not in line with Ozark, Nixon, or Republic.
But who cares?
Well, that's right, who cares? But we certainly don't need to be higher than them. And Casey made a valid point. She said 7 of you have been here less than 1 year. So this needs to be entirely thought out before anything is done. And the opinion that I got from the information that I read was this study has been done. Who knows how much that costs? And we're gonna follow it. I don't agree with that. It's to be questioned. And you most certainly do not. I don't disagree that there's need for an increase, but there definitely needs to be an incremental increase. You don't put an increase in place like this one time and not have an issue.
Regarding doing it quickly, I think as I recall, the recommendation of the analyst was to maintain the reserves necessary to completely.
Sir, can you speak up a little bit more?
Yeah.
Sorry, my voice doesn't carry the best. I'll do my best. I'll try and speak up. Let's go. The analyst has reviewed the reserves. So what he charts, and I think it's also included in there, is you'll see a downward curve as you start to engage in more spending on maintenance and capital improvements. That reserve bottoms out and then eventually goes into the insolvency curve. So what he's recommending is, because some of these costs are coming up much sooner than later, because they haven't been done and planned for in an appropriate time frame, we need to build that reserve up quicker. So his recommendation was we do this sooner than later, which is why we've begun the conversation as quickly as we could.
Now, is that in the city of Willard, or is that?
That's across the system. The tower out there in the meadows also needs considerable maintenance and repair.
Okay, well, we don't seem to have much repair that is needed out there at this time.
You don't see it, but it's
Two
there.
years
There's been
ago.
some, there's been some.
Some, yes.
Yeah, there's been some inside.
Your tower, if it finally corroded and broke, would cost several millions. As it stands, just to repair it and maintain it to where it needs to be will be a couple of million.
Mm-hmm.
2 years ago, I was here as a citizen, living in the city, and the city was presented a presentation from some firm regarding the insides of the towers. It was gonna be over $250,000. Meadows Towers was one of the worst ones, that they needed to do the inside of it. It's not been done yet because there's not been money. That caused me concern. That was when I became more involved in my city, is if my city can't provide water, if the towers need maintenance to the point that they've kicked the can down the road. Again, I asked Wes for 10 years worth of data, and on average, for the last 12 years, we're looking at 2 to 3% increase per year on average over the last 12 years, if it would have been averaged out. It was not averaged out, and I'm sorry, I can't make up for the people that sat in the chair before me. All I can do is say we've kicked the can down the road, and again, my concern was we were presented over 2 years ago, or approximately 2 years ago, we needed over $250,000 internal repairs on the towers. And then this year, as I was on the board, I think, we were presented, who knows the number, external. Can't pull that one out of my
Do you
head.
remember the number off the top of your head?
Well,
Steve, do
somebody
you
help
remember
me.
how much it was to fix the external that we were quoted?
On the Meadows Tower, external is about 175,000.
So you got almost what?
Then you've got
And then the other.
what I call Tower 2 up here at the school, that both needs interior work and the repaint on the outside. And then you go to decide with Tower 1, what do you do with it?
And then Steve had also, part of that presentation was We have to bring in mobile water holding facilities that cost hundreds of thousands of dollars to work on while we're in the Meadows Tower. So there is lots of maintenance that has been kicked down the road.
Okay, but someone help me here. It's been probably 5 years ago that there was work done on the inside of that tower at A, B, and double E.
I wasn't here, don't know.
Because the water level was significantly decreased, and we were warned about cutting back on our water usage during that period of time. Because the tower was, they went in there inside that tower and did a bunch of work on it. What it was, I don't know whether it was pumped, or whether it was recoating it, or what they were doing. But that's been approximately 5 years ago.
I think they had some well cracks in there, some issues inside, and they had leakage, is
And
what I was
they
hearing.
painted the exterior
Oh,
also.
yeah, it's been a long time ago, the exterior.
I mean, it's,
The water pressure
interior
was addressed
that you're
too,
speaking
because
of.
most of us on that side of AB, we didn't have enough water pressure to really go out and wash your car good. And that's how it was when we moved in 30 years ago. So that was addressed. I'm not sure what it cost, but it was addressed.
What was your comment, sir?
Okay. This case where we drained the tower last time was to gouge out and re-weld some slag inclusions in the bottom sheets of the boat.
Okay.
And Dave's right, that leak went on for a long time ago. And we had a problem balancing the system with the production of the wells and the connection to Willard and the tower, and there was some valving that wasn't really well documented to happen that old, but long story short, that last time was internal re-weld repairs to stop the leak.
Okay.
It still needs, and the priority would be to drain that tower, sandblast the interior, put on a 3-part build-up system of paint.
Okay.
And then when you're done with that, you turn around and do the outside, and move on to number 2 and number 1.
I appreciate your explanation of that, because that has never been filtered out to the users.
But that's all included in Mr. Brown's financial projections, because he's been provided the estimated costs, interior, exterior, tower, what I call Tower 3, Tower 2, Tower 1. And then at some point, we've got to address the issue, do we need another well in the legacy, what's really Willard? And do we need additional storage? And that is built in at the tail end. So it's an opportunity to think 10 years down the road, where do we need to be? And what financial requirements do we have to meet the ongoing maintenance? And then once you do a capital project, you've got to pay back whoever you borrowed the money from.
Sure. Well, when Willard bought the Meadows, they needed the capacity and needed the water pressure for Willard, because they did not have it.
No argument about that. The well capacity here is minuscule compared to the 2 wells.
And it seems as though we're being penalized for that at this point.
I can only address the engineering side.
Understand. So, once again, 7 of you are new, in here less than a year. So I don't think you jump on a project like this within 30 days or 60 days or 90 days. Our next move would be to go to the Public Service Commission at Jefferson City. Thank you.
I do wanna say, it's obvious from that discussion, there's needs all over this, all over. Not just the city, not just the, one more justification for, we have one system, let's treat everybody the same.
Yep, that's all we're asking, level playing.
Treat everybody the same. Everybody has needs. It isn't, we aren't spending all our money here, we're just spending it on the system. Let's get everybody in the same playing field. That's all we're asking.
So are you saying you shouldn't pay any more as people live inside the city?
Yes. I am saying that, yes, sir.
Why should I subsidize you people?
What are you subsidizing? We're subsidizing you. What?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're
How many of you really lived in the Meadows when that water system was bought?
I did.
That's
We've
impressive.
lived down here 30 years.
So-
We've been there 30 years.
How is the city of Willard subsidizing?
You heard what he said, didn't you?
I heard what he said, but I also heard that all the water from down there is coming up here. The cost of sewer treatment up here is 500+ thousand a year. The cost of sewer treatment down there is minuscule. Minuscule. So who's subsidizing?
Let me clear one thing up. The free treatment
It's
of
gonna end.
lagoons is gonna end here very, very
I'm well
shortly.
aware of that, and it will be the same.
And that's
as up
obvious.
here. The
Right
same.
here, that's obvious.
It's the same, it's
You
not
want us to be
subsidized, there's no
Willard
difference,
citizens.
everybody should pay the same.
Yeah, we're using each other, is really
Hold on a
what
minute,
it's
ma'am.
down to.
We're all paying.
Angie,
but
were you gonna
we're
go
not
next,
asking
Angie?
you- Yeah, you wouldn't wanna pay.
We'll go Angie, then,
Would you?
and this lady, right here.
That's not, I'm not in a position to have to make that decision.
All right, my name's Angie Wilson. I live on Ridgeview in Willard. And I wanted to thank you for the opportunity for citizens to come. And I'd like to mention, often the board or various ones will kind of scold people for not coming to these meetings. But what you need to understand is when you do come to the meetings and you're critical of the city, or if you're openly critical of the city, you really, there's not much, it's not fun. We get ridiculed, called names. So if you want actual engagement with the community, you need to be a little more accommodating to it and not scold people when they don't just go along. So I was hoping that the board's discussion tonight, and we haven't really gotten to that part yet, was hoping it would include some rate comparisons and some clear information. And I wanted to mention the reporting today in the media was incorrect, and I'm not sure where they got their numbers, but I wanted to make sure we're all on the same page and we know what we're really looking at. So excluding the base charges, the unit charge increase for water customers in the city would be a 37% increase. For non-city customers, it is an 88% increase. Also excluding the base charge changes, the unit charge for sewer customers in the city is an 82% increase. For non-city customers, it will be a 151% increase. And I think anyone hearing those percentage increases can, it's a little shocking. I think all of us agree, we understand you need more money. We can see with our own eyes that the system needs maintenance. But those non-city customers, as has been pointed out, they are in densely populated neighborhoods. They're not all just on farms. They are in neighborhoods. I'm not one of them. I live in the city, so they've spoken very well on their behalf. I'm not suggesting the city doesn't need rate increases, but I would suggest that the city's lack of preparation and kicking the can down the road, as you keep saying, should not mean that Willard residents have to bear the burden in a sudden and reactionary way. And whatever rate increases the board approves, I would ask the following, that you implement rate increases that are proportionate and fair. And even though I live in the city, I cannot understand applying a 151% sewer rate increase to anyone. At the least, an incremental increase would be more fair. And then you need to be accountable to Willard customers. Obviously you are, you have public meetings, but we need to see a report card. If you're gonna get a large revenue increase like that, we need to know what it's going for. We need to know are we getting bang for our buck. You want to do maintenance? We need a report card. What did you maintain this quarter? What did you do toward capital improvements? What went out to bid? More than just in the board packet, which is not always accessible to everyone. You need to be telling your customers what you're doing. An insert in the bill or something. We need to know about the timeline and the plans to do this. If you're getting this big inflow of money, what are you gonna do with it right away? Do you have the staff to immediately start increasing maintenance on the lines, I don't see how you do. But maybe you can explain that. And I would also say you need to encourage economic development. Carl Brown said something pretty profound on September 23rd. He said, when you have lots and lots of these big metered customers, the added complication really is worthwhile to arrive at rates that are more fairly structured. That means there's very little extra money to be recovered from those big meter customers to help drive down the minimum charge of small meter customers. We are all small meter customers. We don't have any big meter customers. Willard has a widely known reputation, fair or not, for being resistant to commercial growth, and a phrase that's often repeated is, we don't want republic. Well, we're not gonna ever be republic. That is really a false fear. It's not gonna happen. We don't have an interstate or a railroad, so don't worry about being republic. We need commercial growth in Willard. And this is a demonstration of where that lack of vision has now affected this room. We need those large customers to absorb this kind of increase. And so I hope that you will take that into consideration.
I just have a question. I live on Z Highway North, right outside of the city limits. I have been here for 6 years, moved here, back here from Florida. We are on city water, but have a septic tank. We're one of 28 failing septic tanks on the Z Highway, east side of the road, Allen and Long. And we've been told that all of the lift stations north of town are completely full. The sewer system runs right in front of our house to go to the rec center and to also go to the fire department. They did offer annexation for us to become part of the city. Without being annexed into the city, we cannot be on city sewer. Likewise, if we stay on septic, our septic is literally failing miserably. If we annexed into the city, are we eligible now? Did the septic, or did the sewer system grow and we have space in the sewer now? Or is that just water for us? Or does it even affect us? I'm in the county, so I wasn't sure.
So are you asking it now, you can hook up to the city sewer water?
Yeah, I mean,
Is that
my
the
rates are
question?
gonna increase, so do I get sewer also if I annex into the city limits?
Mike?
Are you paying sewer? No, I'm on a septic system.
So I think everything, on Z Highway is, the lift station B, which we're at capacity at. That's why the Kine property hasn't developed, that's why that 150 acres on the east side hasn't developed. There just hasn't been capacity at the lift station for the last 10 years.
They just built tons of houses off of 68
I've
towards
been here,
Eagle Star.
I've been here 9 months, so,
Okay.
I'm,
I spoke to
so.
Brad.
Is that the growing,
Well,
Yeah, that's-
I can understand your concern with the past history, but, you know, I mean, you have to give a little bit of due diligence to have people come up to speed with the history of Willard.
Can I speak to
So-
this one? Because there was an issue back when I was here.
Please.
Thanks. So the issue is, yeah, they're on Long and Allen, I believe, yeah. There's no, sewer on that side. So the issue is trying to get a sewer line on that side, which means going under Z Highway. It's an expensive proposition, and for one property, now, if that group, that little subdivision there, if that subdivision wanted to annex in, I suspect that the city might
So
be.
there's room for 28 houses on the sewer system?
I don't know the numbers, I don't know, but I'm gonna say from back in, when I was here, that was one of the concerns that we had, is that to run a line under, to hit one house would be, extremely costly. Just to bore underneath Z Highway, would be extremely costly. So that was a concern there. I don't know about capacity anymore with the additions. There have been capacity issues at B. There was a capacity study done at some point in time, back before I left. But there's been additions to that system,
So I don't know where they stand at this point. I can't answer that.
There are still capacity issues with lift station B, and in the financial analysis regarding capital improvements, in the sewer part of the rate study, there's an allocation made there to upgrade the capacity of lift station B. I don't know what year it's in, I'd have to look it up in a chart. But, that is what is limiting the addition of customers. Anything that comes in lift station B is its capacity to move it on to lift station 94. But as I said, that's addressed part of the capital improvement plan. Dave makes a very good point. Depending on the number of people and who shares what cost, getting under the highway before, and then running a gravity main, assuming you have the capacity at lift station B to handle it, is to be worked out as who bears those expenses. Because it's per unit will become fairly costly.
I guess my question was just annexation is not necessary then if I'm not gonna get the services provided by it. If sewer is not an option, then we, NZ Highway and Allen and Long should not annex into the city limits.
That is a decision that rests with the Board of Aldermen, on how they want to apply the situation.
There are only two benefits that I could see to us annexing. They're at Highway Z. One, the lower water rates now, if this gets approved. Two, actually being able to vote on this board and have representation in the community that we live in, and be able to actually attend regular city meetings and be able to speak on city issues. So there are only two benefits that I see to us annexing at this point.
Thank you, guys.
So I guess the burden would fall on the board to tell us why we should annex into your city limits. What is the benefit to us besides those two that she just listed? You know, what do you offer us for annexing in? Because as it stands, I don't want to annex into your city limits.
Well, I would disagree with you. It's not the board's job to sell you to come into the city. If you don't wanna come into the city, don't come into the city. I guarantee you, nobody here cares if you do or you don't.
That was just
And
an
that right
option.
We're not out there trying to get people to come into the
We
city.
didn't ask
It's
you
just if you
but
want
yet
to.
you're asking
Proved
us
my
to pay
point by
double.
saying you don't care what we think.
It's up to you if you
And
want
we
to or not.
can't vote.
It's
We're not
completely up to
supposed
you.
vote.
No one's trying to force anybody to do anything. It's completely up to you guys what you wanna do. That's why we're here. That's why we're having this conversation.
Okay, so
I'm not
we
trying to
don't wanna do
sell, no one here is trying to sell anybody on whether you should be in the city or not be in the city. There, guy in the back right corner, he's next.
I've got one question. If the system is so, if it's so bad, are we still issuing building permits?
Yes, we are.
Why are we continuing growth if we can't hold it?
That was my question, why are we still building
I said new construction, I said,
Yeah,
why are you guys issuing permits until we get this resolved?
that's my question, why are we seeing building of new homes if there's not enough for people to have their waste and sewage?
Oh,
Why
Mike,
are we
go
building
ahead, Mike.
systems?
So, as was addressed earlier, we have 7 lift stations in the city. And those lift stations take care of different areas, and not all of those lift stations have capacity and pumping issues. Just the older lift stations have pipe size issues that doesn't allow the volume to flow. Please, you have a comment.
Oh, no, I've been in the meadow since '93.
Okay.
And just about a couple months ago, you guys sent a letter about the pipe size thing, which I understand all that, So with the meadows, what lift station do we have?
The Meadows is, you have 2 lift stations in the Meadows
Okay.
that pump to the lagoon.
Right.
But the lagoon will eventually go away.
That's, okay.
So, so the construction you're seeing is on lift stations that have capacity.
Okay,
So you're seeing some construction in the middle of town. That's been a subdivision that's been approved for several years, but it's on it's on a lift station that has capacity that does not have issues.
Okay.
So that's the growth you're seeing in Woodward right now.
So let me ask you a question. So we're in the medical area, so it sounds to me, and I think what I heard earlier, is that it really, we cost you less money, but we pay more money for sewer for several years, right?
Yeah, I think it was 2018 that they had the
The surcharge?
the resident, non-resident, like I said,
Okay,
yeah.
so we've been charged, and I think my husband can actually speak to this better, we pay $70 a month for our sewer. Right, on average.
Yeah.
So what did I really cost you? Was that $19?
That's,
Cause I made notes.
that's a question that's above my pay grade, honestly, I'm
but that's the
I'm the planning and development director, I don't have the numbers in front of me for all of that.
So does anybody know the answer to these questions?
What I cost you? Yeah, what did we
Per
cost? What did
customer, I mean, we'd have
No,
to
per house.
pull the numbers and do a division on, you know.
See, that's what we thought we were coming to find those numbers out.
That
Yeah,
was
3
up to
weeks
this
ago.
point and up to the time when they hooked to the city of Springfield. The cost to treat, it's essentially been a little bit of electric to run the pump, or, I'm sorry, it used to be diesel, I think they changed it out to electric now. Electric to run the pump, maintenance of a land-applied sprinkler system. Let's see, and then general maintenance on pipes and things of that nature. That's, which is, you have that general maintenance on the system everywhere. So the cost, is, like I said, it's a very passive system. It's a lagoon. It's 2 lagoons, 2 cell lagoon system. So, and it works great. It works great. So, yeah.
But we,
Actual cost has been very low.
Well, just curious, since y'all don't care if we come to Willard, we heard that. Why don't you sell the, Meadows Water Company to the city of Springfield?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cut your losses, get rid of that piece of junk.
Yeah.
Because obviously,
Because
when you pay a 151% increase because of how big a piece of junk it is, so sell it to the city of Springfield. You don't want us.
Well,
That's just, I mean, that's basically what he said. Well, I know Willard needs the water, but you know.
I'll so the city of Willard is passing through, they're just passing on those rate increases that are coming from the city of Springfield. There are some, I mean, and they don't, they've been reluctant in the past to do that at every time. That's part of what's gotten the city in the position they're in.
Does Willard know what percent surcharge that city utility charges their rural customers?
5%.
10%. 15 in some cases.
And in the future, I mean, we have problems, the city of Willard's having problems with sewage. So in the future, what is the plans for the future? Are you always just gonna pump it to Springfield? Is that what you're gonna do?
Yeah.
We hope not.
That's a whole other subject. We've
But
been
that's
numerous-
what we're talking
whole
about, though,
other
in the future. I mean, it's
conversations
crazy, you're gonna
about-
just run us out of our house.
Because, yeah, I mean, there's been many discussions about whether or not do we get a plan, do we not get our own plan, there's a lot of math involved, and, it's my understanding that we're not at the point where that cost would be beneficial right now, because we're talking millions upon millions of dollars hiring the staff to staff such an operation. So, there's a lot to talk about on both sides of that coin also, about location, where's it go, what property owner is gonna sell the land for that, but it's my understanding mathematically that we're not there yet.
We've been told that we.
Because, I mean, I assure you this, I mean,
Need it, yeah.
I don't like the fact that we are subservient to another city and that they raise their rates, and of course, we have to raise our rates, there's nothing we can do about it. I don't like that, but right now, there's nothing I can do about it.
That's what I'm trying to say. If we continue to pump to Springfield, they're gonna continue to raise their rates.
Yes, they are.
And then, at 150% is what you want us to pay now.
what's the future gonna be like? I mean, this is bad enough now, what you're, asking us to do.
So what is your plan to cut us completely off from Springfield and handle our own?
We're continuing to have discussions, but we're not at the point where that makes sense to build our own plant right now.
Is the reason we're doing away with the lagoon or the meadows, is that a state requirement or is that Willard's requirement?
That's DNR.
DNR.
State?
Well, EPA passes it through the state, yeah.
CIA.
Yes, ma'am, go ahead. Yes, ma'am, you're here.
I'm Marilyn Ulrey. I live on Cactus Street on the north side of Villa Park. Casey and I have fought a different battle for a different reason. So I know she got on this board for a good reason. Many of you do not know the Meadows and the Villa Park history. And a lot of that's already been said, but let me restate this. In the past, we were not allowed to come and speak at a meeting just because we weren't in the city. We come and spend money at the city. We do a lot of things in the city of Willard, and there's many good things about Willard, but we need representation. And this question is pretty simple, and maybe it's because I'm simple. Is there an expert that regulates the water that comes out of my tap? Recently, I have odor from the water. Or is there just a handful of you that get together and do a
No, we
do
do
a
too. We've
test?
had for a long
Do a
time.
test and say,
Smells
okay,
bad
we need
too.
more bleach in it today. We've got somebody that knows what they're doing.
Yeah, they have to
Very
do
capable
regular
individual
testing.
that been overseeing the water for years, very capable.
Can those of you with ODA please email me so
But-
that I can?
I can't hear you.
Could you email me, and I think you also said
I
you had
will.
ODA, if you would email me, we'll get someone to look and see if there's anything we need to fix after that. We do need to know that stuff.
Yeah, I live just down the street from you, so yeah, we can understand.
Yeah, let me know if one of you wants to submit an email for, if you're the group in a blog or each of you, but
Okay.
please let me know. We do test it, we're required to test it, we're required to submit those reports to DNR, so if there's something that's further down the line where we're not getting it tested, then we'll get someone out there to check it out for you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Yes, of course.
Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
I think the bottom line is that we understand that there needs to be a rate increase, but it needs to be fair.
Well, I think Steve brought up an interesting point, and I don't say this to motivate more argument, but one thought, I wonder how, if there were 50 people from inside the city here, and the expert was here, and explained why it costs more for you to receive the services, I wonder if the 50 or 100 inside city limits people would say, we want to subsidize you, because you say you don't want to subsidize them. So, I mean, those are just thoughts that I'm thinking out loud, is wonder what they would say.
But they're using a lot of our water.
Sure, and I understand that. And I know that would be your argument, well, you're getting the water, and if the expert said, well, if the expert could point out how
Yes.
your services cost more, would 50 or 100 people that live inside the city say, well, this isn't fair, they should pay more, and you guys say, no, we shouldn't, then the board is left with this decision to
You
make.
hit the nail on the head. You know, it needs to be across the board, an even amount.
But that's what I'm saying, with the people inside the city, if there were 100 of them here, would they say that's fair?
Show them the figures that, bottom line, the Meadows water, they're drinking the Meadows water.
And showering.
You know, it's, again, I just want it to be fair. And I think consistency across the board. This division of city and rural needs to end. There is no value in it. It is a divisive issue, and it brings nothing. This should be a system, we all use it, we all pay for it, we all pay the same. There is no cost difference. I'm sorry to say, there is no cost.
Back of a football one, eliminate racism.
So these are the things that, you know, obviously these are the things that the board has to consider, because, you know, obviously we talk to, and we hear from both sides of the fence, if you will. And unfortunately, we can't go back and fix what we may see as mistakes from the past. So it's really only important on what we do going forward. Because I agree 100% with whoever said something about no representation.
Yeah.
That makes absolutely no sense to me. And had I been around back then, whoever was making the decisions then, I would have said, this makes no sense whatsoever, because you don't have representation, and that's not fair. But how do we fix it? I don't know.
2008's a long time ago.
Yeah, so, I mean, we've heard what you've said, you know, we'll have to have discussions, and at some point, we'll have to come to some type of conclusion. Yes, ma'am?
Part of my problem is the fact that when you sent this notice out, it was printed on the back of my bill. Most months, I use the e-bill. I don't even see the back of my bill.
We do too, yeah.
So, I think there should be some way of making this more well communicated. I'm not sure how many people aren't here, because they just didn't know. We didn't know about that last meeting, so we didn't show up to find out what was going on. I think there needs to be a lot more communication between you guys and the rest of the community, because that is a large problem, is lack of communication.
So you got notification on your bill, it was posted on social media, in postings.
But
Does it go to the Greene County Commonwealth?
I don't have internet.
It goes to Greene County Commonwealth. How many more?
That was this time.
Yeah.
That was for this meeting.
Okay.
The last meeting, I didn't get anything on my bill.
Yeah.
I don't remember seeing anything on the bill, and I look at it every time.
Let me do this, and I need to check with
But that's in the past.
our council here, our council and the city administrator, and if it would be an expense, I would assume that we
For
would.
those of us who use the e-bill, how much harder is it just to add the front and back to the bill if you're gonna put notices on the back of the bill? Or have like an additional text on there whenever there's something coming up that we need to know about?
Okay.
To add like the subway to do.
Put a big star on it, big
Separate.
red star, and that
Or
would
even
say
just
the
a
back of the
separate
bill.
notice, like a
That's what
separate
we're
email
trying to
to
get
notice
the website.
gets
Okay.
out.
We are working.
We are working on a new website whereby a lot of these things will be posted under like events and projects. So you can just go to the city website, so as long as you have the internet, you can go find all these things.
It's gonna be a problem. Because there are some people who don't have internet. How are
I
they
don't
gonna
have
get
internet.
this information?
Could you call like you do when you shut our water off?
Oh.
Look at that nice little house.
Yeah, we did robocall. I know it never cost the paper and postage.
So-
Yeah, how hard would it be to send just a
We can try mailing notices. But back to the subject of the expert. Back to the subject of the expert who authored the report that you guys have the questions about. I'm certain he will probably charge us, I don't know how much, to come back and have another round. If the board approves that expense, which we would have to, correct me if I'm wrong, Nate, we'll have to put that for the next meeting agenda, to have that on the agenda for the board to either approve or not approve, to pay him again, to come here, so all of you can come back and question the validity of his report. Would you all show up for it?
If I'm in town, I'll show up.
Well, I just have a
So
question.
you put a
about
note in
that.
the water bill, I'll show up.
I just have
It's
a
gonna be,
question
it's gonna be
about that.
considerably expensive, so,
I
I mean, is one person gonna show up, or is nobody gonna show up, or is
I just
everyone gonna
wanted
show
to
up?
mention that meeting is on YouTube. I was at that meeting.
So we can
and-
go there and watch it.
Yeah, you can watch it on YouTube. I personally don't think it will add much to the conversation. I watched it and, I mean, he states pretty clearly that, he couldn't really use cost of service for the basis of the rates. And he also mentioned that since out of city people don't pay sales tax in Willard, this is kind of, or, I'm sorry, not sales tax, city tax. This is kind of the way to collect it on the back end, which I found really shocking that he said that out loud. So I think you'd be spending a lot of money for a even more angry conversation. I think what we really need to hear from is the board, I don't know if you guys need to have a work study or something to put your heads together and figure out a more equitable way. And there are some of us here from in-city, and we understand the frustration of the out-of-city people. I consider you guys my neighbors. I used to live in the Meadows. I'd be furious. I mean, I'm upset enough about 37 and 88% increase on my rates. If that was the only issue, you'd still have a room full of pretty upset people.
Okay, so don't check into bringing the guy back, is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, correct.
Correct, don't bring him back.
No.
Yeah, I
Don't
don't
need
know,
to bring it
I
back.
mean, all he's gonna do is try to, you know, like she said, it's like you want him to tell us why you want to raise our rates so
Right.
much. And I think with some of
I'd rephrase that and say, why does he suggest that
why
we
does
raise
he
your rate
suggest,
so much?
and I think she explained one of them. It's
We
just
really
getting
don't
money
want
at the tail end of it, you know?
You
And
guys
if
think-
we're a community, because I've heard that word used quite a few times, then we're a community, and a community shares the responsibility. It's not laid out on certain community members.
Working together.
Yes, we
Yes.
work together to make it better.
And if he wasn't able to use cost of service to actually calculate the rates, then why are we referencing cost of service as the reason for increasing the rates
That'd
on
be
the
a great
road?
question for him.
See,
That wasn't asked.
That was
I think it's in the report. I
we
think it
don't
specifically spells it out in the report.
consider ourselves Willard citizens. Well, we really don't. We've lived out there for 30 years. And honestly, there's nothing in Willard for us to come to really shop for. So we don't even come in. Once my mother-in-law left the senior center up there, we don't basically come in. There's no incentive for us to, but we still pay our bill, we still send it all into you, but you're thinking that we all monitor the web pages or whatever for the city of Willard. We don't. So that's one of the reasons why we all are not always aware of what's going on.
I consider myself a part of Willard, even though I have a Springfield address.
Yes.
My grandchildren go to the Willard schools.
Yeah.
I live within walking distance of a Willard elementary school.
Yeah.
And I am in Willard every day. My son lives
Yeah.
here, a lot of times I buy groceries here, so
Yeah.
you're getting my money.
Yeah.
You know, but my other statement is this. You had the man come, you guys had a meeting with him, and my only question is I know you're wanting him to come back to explain to us, but isn't that what the alderman's job is to do for us, is to explain those things to us, where we can where we understand them and know what you're,
My response to that would be not something so technical, and if you start to read that 75-page report, it is extremely technical, laden with engineering methodologies that are well above our
Have them simplify it.
Steve understands it, but him and maybe Wes are about the only two in the room that could adequately and accurately digest and regurgitate back to you exactly what it was in English he said. That's why we had him come back to have a meeting like this, so he could explain it in English. Because I don't want to misrepresent or say something inaccurately and mess it all up, and then it's the media and the web pages and frustrating about a number was wrong.
Frustrating part as well is the formulas are hidden. You can't see something, man.
Yes, sir.
How much is the city of
Yeah, I
Willard?
don't think.
If they annex this, how much are they gonna get in city taxes by annexing this? Well, how much money will the city of Willard get on city taxes if they annex outside?
What is property tax?
I couldn't tell you.
I can
I don't
give you
care, Lynn or
a
Wes.
ballpark, what do you say, about 300,000, it's not a huge windfall.
About a year? Wes said about $300,000 a year.
And that is an incredible ballpark.
And that's just ballpark.
Yeah.
So about $300 a year.
It's,
There's about 1,000, 1,100, 1,200 properties, so about $300 per acre property. Find that much.
All right, so if there's nothing else, we'll move on with our agenda.
Wonder how that.
One last call? Nothing?
Appreciate it.
Are you guys gonna let us know on the next meeting what you guys decided?
How long?
Or when's that gonna be?
In 2 weeks, we'll have another meeting, and we haven't built the agenda for that, but keep an eye out, because if we anything we do, it will have to be on the agenda. So keep an eye out for it, and if we vote on anything, it will have to be on the agenda. And there usually is a discussion beforehand, so if you see something that interests you on this subject and any other subject, I mean, come to the meeting.
2 weeks from tonight here?
Yes, correct. No, we'll probably be back in City Hall. We came here tonight because we anticipated a bigger crowd, there's not enough room next door in City Hall.
But they're always at 6?
Yes. So, and you know, all of our numbers are easy to find, even though you live outside the city. I mean, I know that you could call any one of us and get any kind of information that you might want.
And we'll see if the robocall thing might work. That probably might be the best way to make it work. Mass notification, because our bell system is not solely cooperative.
Okay then. If there's nothing else, we'll move on to item number 8. City administrator's remarks.
Well, I haven't done too much mischief. We have the tablets for saving some paper. We hope to have those at the next meeting set up. Janice will work on those ahead of time. Mike, I just want to recognize Mike, make him really uncomfortable and squirmy. He did an excellent job while I was gone. I'm very proud of him. He's done a great job. He's had some challenges. Took him on the chin, took care of business. So he's done a great job. And that's really all I have for this one.
Alright. Item number 9, any new business?
And I don't know if they'll just, if it needs to be an email, but.
Thank you very much. I appreciate Representative.
Is there a way with the data that's provided to, what if it's a flat rate across the board? Is there a way with the data that we have for you to pull that, Wes?
I wish. He has a proprietary spreadsheet that the critical stuff is hidden from, so we can't really do any self-estimations without involving him. I have done rate studies in the past. They're not overly onerous. It does give us the added benefit of knowing exactly how the numbers are made. The detriment is, it is us as a city saying we need this, not somebody telling us what in their expert knowledge we need. So there's that difference in calculus on the back end of what you said, somebody else said. Could we do some rough numbers? Yes. He did say he could remodel free of charge. I don't know what extent that goes to. We could potentially ask him to provide maybe a bit more data.
Or even just what would a flat rate be?
Yeah.
To come out with the same.
If you look around, and again, Missouri is my home now, but you know, previous communities, I have seen it as typically is a surcharge for out of county. I think in us it is more of a sharp increase on the front end, which I can understand is quite shocking. But looking at Springfield, I mean, it looks like in the area we're seeing about a 50%, except in Bolivar where they got bought out by a private utility and their rates just, I mean, they smashed every glass ceiling they could find. So I mean, there is typically a high cost out there. I gather where the community's coming from. It maybe has a different dynamic that the board can consider for Willard with the purchase of their system. But ultimately, we have to find a way to make the system functional before the system potentially fails on us. And that would be a worse outcome, I think, for in and out of county, or out of city residents. Short answer though, I guess we could see how much it would cost to remodel on a different percentage if the board wanted to adjust.
Can we step it?
What's that?
Can we step it?
In increments.
And do smaller increments to end up at the final number where it.
Ideally, my recommendation would be yes. Especially with the sharp increase. The trouble is
I know we've put it
you've
off.
been backed into a corner by a lack of maybe foresight. I know, and again, we have to remember Willard is not unique. You know, this is a conversation that's difficult for communities, not just even in America. I see this back home in England. Nobody wanted to do it. They went up selling all the public utilities to private, and it did not work out so well. Nobody wants to pay more for anything. You don't wanna go to Walmart and pay more for your groceries. You don't wanna go to the gas station and pay more for gas. Income goes up far slower than everything else seems to go up. It's uncomfortable, but I think, you know, we all live here, some of us out of town, some of us in town. We all see the problem. Can we make it fair potentially? Do we have time to really step it? I don't think we have time for that based on what we're seeing. We have costs that are coming quickly.
Right.
But, I mean, the board can decide to take that risk if you wish.
Did I see that some of the cost is coming borrowed from the water department?
Yeah, so at one point, the sewer department will dip into the red.
Okay.
Because it's a utility, you can kind of cross over.
Right.
Especially if the board approves that kind of crossover.
If we step it, that would just slow down the payback to the water?
And stop some of the.
Yeah, there are some
maintenance.
strategies. So what you're trying to do on the front end is you're trying to build a reserve quickly on the water
Right.
side to fund the sewer side. And then on the back end, you're trying to rebuild the sewer reserve to repay
Right.
the water fund. At which point, I mean, you run into a situation where your costs may be, you know, as we do these rate studies ongoing, which I really think we cannot stop doing this annually. We've got to continue to share with the public where we're at and what we're doing. And in that calculation, we can maybe say, hey, you know, the reserves are growing back at a healthy rate. Maybe we don't need to do any rate. Maybe at some point there's a potentiality that we're seeing savings now. The system's in good shape. We're not having things blow out. We're in a stable situation. There's always the possibility that costs go down. We're supposed to base our annual rates on what our actual costs are looking like. If we're budgeting $1 million on a water tower, then that's kind of what we have to consider in the rate. If we get to a point where we are all paid up and we don't have any scary costs on the horizon and costs are looking good, theoretically, the board could approve a rate reduction. Is it likely? Who knows? I don't know if it would be, but it's, you know, anything's possible. The point being, to your question, you know, if rates and reserves are looking good, you know, you can look at the costs and say, hey, it's 1% this year, let's just cut it out and just give it a break. But we have to look at it every year. We have to have these uncomfortable conversations every year. It does help the community, I think, to have the conversation every year. Like somebody had mentioned, you know, they can come in here and hear,
Right.
what are you doing? What is going on?
I like the idea
And,
of a grade card,
you know,
a report card.
yeah, and actually, report cards is something I'm working on, so I love Danger's
I think that's a
suggestion.
great
I think it's
idea.
a great.
I have proof, he sent me an email already.
Yeah, I have proof. We talked about it earlier. But honestly, having these conversations every year and saying to the community, here's where we're at this year, 2%. It's 75 cents.
Right.
You know, it's a lot less frustrating. You still don't really want to do it, but at the same time, you understand because you've had that ongoing conversation. And it's 75 cents. You know, I'll have one less coffee this month. But when you kick the can down the road so many times, and again, it's nothing against any of us, at some point you have to pay the piper. And if you don't pay the piper, somebody buys the utility at a fire sale price. So we don't need to get to that point. Then they've got dividends and investments to repay. It's just not a good
And then the
thing
price
for
goes way up.
And I come from a country where they did that. And, you know, they promised us the earth with these privatization efforts. And it did not pan out. So there is benefit to keeping it in the community. It is better for the community. Even the out-of-town folks do have a voice. You know, and I think we need to make sure that they know they can exercise that voice. And hopefully the hearing tonight has given that opportunity to do that. But as a board, you are in a difficult position. We have, as a group, inherited the past. We are trying to move it to a better future. And I think this is a chance to do that. The utility is a business, but it's not a profit-based business. But we do have to make sure it stays solvent. We do have to make sure it runs properly. And given some of the challenges of the past, we do have to assure the community that we are moving ahead in a better direction. So I think the report card is a great way to go. I shared with Joyce, my fellow spreadsheet nerd, It's one of the things I'm working on to show the community where the money's going, so they can just log on and take a look.
That would be fantastic.
So it works for water, it's so far working, I don't think we found anything that was broken on it, so we might be closer than we think. Big picture, we can just work the best we can to show the community that we are moving in a better and safer direction. And share the information they need.
Janice, were you able to get this out to everybody? I know it was like 5:15
It was
when
pretty
it
sharp.
was-
I think we'll put that on the website, I think that'll be a place for that.
So just for the fellow alder that haven't seen this, so one of the things when I was reading through some stuff and just conversations with some citizens, I wanted to know what has happened over the last 10 years, because I don't know how much my bill's gone up, because apparently it didn't go up enough to bother me. So in 12, we were at $12 a month for the first $1,000.
1,000 gallons ago.
Or, yeah, 1,000 gallons, I'm always thinking dollars. We did not have a rate increase until 18, and it was 5%. Then we had a 5% in 19, a 5% in 22, and a 10% in 24, and this was in town. And if you take the total that it went up from 12 to now, the difference was 27%. If you divided that by 12, which really isn't a good estimation because you don't have a compounding factor on it, but if you just divided it by 12 years, in town we've gone up 2.27% a year. And again, that's not really actual because it's not the compounding factor.
Either.
Yeah, it's not compounded, so it would actually be a little bit less. On out of town and water, it was 3.215%. And this doesn't include the current new rate proposal. On sewer, we actually in 13 had a 20% decline in the rate. And then we had 5, 5, 5, and 10. It netted to a 0.5% increase on sewer on the base rate. On out of town, it was 1.337%. That does not even keep up with the payroll that has increased just with, even if we only had the same number of people. So I think, like I say, I prefer to look to see if he can run a quick tweak of what would it be across the board. If, if we all, with a minimal out-of-town service difference. And in saying that, again, why in 12 were we the same and then all of a sudden somebody said, hey, out-of-towns need to be more, because the rate increases were set 5.5, and if it was based on a study, ideally it would be 3.629 or whatever. So I don't know that a study was necessarily done at that point. I think it was just, hey, 5% sounds good.
12 was about when we had the last big annual audit, or big state audit. That's what happened.
That potentially they adjusted that because of whatever was in reserves and they didn't have.
That's about when that was, wasn't it, Carolyn?
2010, I believe.
Yeah, so 12 is when we would have gotten all the results of everything, and they would have said, oh, we need to.
Potentially, yeah. So, I mean, I think, like I say, I personally would like to see numbers with a less variance between in and out of town.
I think that the variance between the two is much more steep than it needs to be. I don't disagree with having a little bit of difference because of
I gotta drive out there to work on their water line. It doesn't cost the same to work on the water line. I gotta drive out there. I mean, I know that's pennies, but it does cost more to service that.
You have that on the books now, you have about a
we have a little bit of a
7 or 8%
difference,
surcharge.
a little bit of, it's not anything massive, and there's no reason to go from just like this to like this.
Yeah, I want to say to be specific, it's like 9.63. I think if you start looking around other communities, I suspect Kyle's
I
goal
think
was to
all
align
of
us
the
with what
other
other communities are
have a little
doing.
bit of a difference out of
City
town.
utilities is about 50%, not
Correct.
10%. Nixer is about the same,
But
Republic is
there's
about
no
the same.
reason to
but
have this.
We can
ban-
do whatever you guys want to do. We just have to make sure it's modeled in a way that ultimately achieves the goal that we've got to build the reserves and fix the system.
We have to make the repairs and the maintenance to the system. While nobody wants to pay increases, nobody wants to go into the bathroom and try to flush the toilet and not have any water come flooding
Your
through.
risk is, and I ran into this in my last community before I came here, the system gets to a point of age where you have a very unexpected surprise, and if you don't have the reserves to take care of it, and you can't borrow it, there's only one option, and nobody wants that
No.
option. So, you have to take care of what you know, and as a board, it's ultimately the responsibility to make sure the system remains solvent. And it is an uncomfortable thing, and as I said earlier, I think that's why a lot of people put off the rates, because it's an uncomfortable discussion, but I think if you do it regularly, you do it routinely, people do understand what's going on.
I mean, we all know our
It's
cable bill
easy to
goes
pay.
up, we all know that our mortgage,
Yeah,
our
exactly.
homeowner's insurance, everything goes up, and I think that's part of what makes this difficult, is because everything goes up. But everything goes up incrementally, rather than getting hit by that frying pan of your water sewer just skyrocketed.
Yeah.
So Wes, just so I'm clear, are we proposing, or, Mr. Brown proposing the rates on page 15 and 17?
Can you roll through that, please?
51.3, and Jason, you thought you got away with it.
Oh, okay.
51.3, 48.6.
Table A, table B.
Table A and.
Yeah, he was proposing just a two-tier system, in-city, out-of-city, so you've got, 26.34 per month minimum charge for sewer.
What page?
17 is this one. 15, okay.
15 is water, 17 is sewer.
So if we're looking at the water page together, page 15, 12.57, minimum monthly charge. He's proposing we do not do a usage allowance, which is more typical practice these days. So if you use, 1 gallon, you'll pay $3.91 for your first 1,000, and then if you use 1,001 gallons, you pay another $3.
Not all of them do it per 1,000 gallons.
No, that's true.
Some of them are, whatever the abbreviation is, but it's like
CCA.
740 gallons. And so
That'll be cubic feet.
it makes you think you're getting 1,000 gallons.
So on this rate sheet that you gave me.
I have not
Yeah.
included that on that rate
Stupid
sheet.
meter.
That's just the start.
They do that so you can't read the water pressure.
Right.
Oh, for in-city it's a slight decline, so someone using 1,000 gallons or less potentially would see, I believe, about $1 decrease.
Well, it went from 1528 to 1257, like a
Oh,
$3.
that one changed since I got my number in my head, yeah. So, I mean, yeah,
So,
somebody who's
and-
a very low user would
And like I
see-
say, that's what I had pulled out and just trying to write and look, and
Once you hit the 2,000 mark, which I think is close to the average, maybe 2,500 to 3,000, you'll see an increase in the city. But obviously a sharper increase out in the city based on that, of course. Combination of the two. The
But yeah,
water was the one that Carl did say was the least onerous, I think, of the proposed. He was proposing
The reason you have
144.
such a bigger increase in sewer is I think your deferred maintenance on sewers.
That and
Way
we're
worse.
charged so much by Springfield.
Yeah,
We
no,
have to
I
pass-
believe, and I may be misremembering,
think
but I
it's
believe they're anticipating 8%.
Or
increase for a
8%
while.
every year.
Next 3
Yeah,
years, for the next 3 years, it's 8%.
And I believe they've already planned out after that.
Probably so.
Can you just expand the lagoons?
So,
I'm kidding.
DNR just wagged the big finger.
I know.
you have options which, I mean, it becomes a NIMBY issue, and I think we all know what the likely scenario needs to be. We have kind of costs of incidents. Yes, we don't like giving our money to another entity when we could maybe keep it at home a little bit more, but ultimately, the cost to build and finance a plant.
At the same time that we're paying to send to
Yeah.
Springfield, that's the hard
No,
thing.
I was responsible for an activated sludge plant, which most likely will be what we would look at, as far as cost. They're very clean, they're very fresh, they're actually quite relaxing when you hear the little things spinning. I had a very brave.
You're so pleasant.
Yeah, I often would joke, I would literally work in that office out there
That
because
white
it was
noise.
so relaxing, it was wonderful. But anyway,
Therapy spa.
yeah, there's only one spot that smells and you had to get really close to it. But the sewer director at the time assured me you could put your cup to the outpipe and drink from it, and took a drink, and I'm like, nope, not doing that. So that, I mean, point being, they're not as disgusting and smelly as, 20, 30 years ago.
But they're expensive.
They cost money.
Yeah.
We ran our sewer budget for about $903,000 a year, and it was profitable. Actually contributed to general fund operations, so they can be profitable, and it does allow the city and the customers really to see the BMW in the driveway rather than have to drive 20 miles to see someone else's BMW. So I mean, there's benefits, but most people have that old contention that it stinks, it's horrible, I don't want to look at it, I don't want to smell it. And
Our lift station stinks,
I get
so,
that.
it can't
Yeah,
be any
I
worse.
get that.
Well, I live in a city where the sewer treatment plants at one time was outside the city, now it's right on the main, I mean, you can see it, but it doesn't, I'm not gonna say it never smells, but it's.
What causes the
it's very,
smell
very,
is when they
doesn't happen.
slosh.
Yeah.
So if you've got, and that's why the lift station smells, is it's pumping in and it's churning, and
Yeah.
sometimes the scrubbers get to where they need a little bit of a clean, but, they are a surprisingly clean operation. I'm certain Missouri DNR is just the same as Kansas DNR, and they watch it very carefully, and there's a lot of reports. But ultimately, big picture, we're just not,
We're not there. We
we're
don't
just
have
not
the
there.
usage
It's
yet.
cheaper for the city to continue to do what we're doing until Springfield gets to the point. They may say, we can't afford to keep taking the, they have to focus on their residents first, so that may come a day, and then it may not. They may continue to expand it. Like, we're talking about cost to serve. Springfield has a cost to serve, and we are a customer of Springfield, so if they advance and expand their plant, they're gonna pass that on to us. So,
They have.
So, yeah, and they are, and they will, but it's just it's a whole lot to consider. It's very forward thinking, but I think for now, the big focus is, what is the board's comfort level as far as where we go from here? I think in some ways it was perhaps a blessing that the ordinance wasn't ready, because we can go back and make some adjustments to the numbers if you like, and I can have Carl model some of those scenarios and see what we can come up with and gauge your comfort level, maybe have the community come back. I do agree with some folks, maybe there's no utility in having Carl come back. But for others, sometimes there's a benefit of being able to ask the question to the guy who's saying this stuff, as opposed to the folks that are kind of playing the end of the game.
So from a procedural standpoint, where do we need to go as far as coming up with a number that the board is comfortable with? Is that just something that we need to put on an agenda and have an open debate about? Scott might want this, Casey might want that, and
I believe you could have that, maybe we could have
do a
the
work study.
scenarios ahead, you could do a work study, or you could have the scenarios ahead of reading the ordinance next time and tell.
Well, I just want Janice to, I don't wanna write 5 different ordinances and say.
I think the end game is we have, whatever the number is, we have to come up with 10 million in 10 years, or whatever the final number is. So if Carl can tell us how to back into that a little bit better, potentially with less, I don't think there was one citizen here that says you don't need to raise rates. I think the discord was the rate structure doesn't feel fair.
We also haven't crossed the Rubicon of all this information filtering out to the inside city limits personnel. Because when they hear that they're subsidizing them, what kind of repercussions are there gonna be then? This room will be filled probably with the same amount of people with the other argument.
They do realize that the bulk of the water that they get, we've talked about this in multiple meetings, that the bulk of our water does come from the meadows. So in that
Casey,
regard.
I don't remember.
They have to understand though, in 2008, the metal system went away. it is the Willard water system.
I get that.
So-
They
I
It's
sold
really
understand.
not us versus them, it's
It's not
not
a
theirs,
city,
we're getting their
it's not a
water,
city
it's not us and
issue.
them.
It's not a city, I agree, it's, you know.
They sold
it's-
it. They
It's one
opted to
system,
sell.
it's one system, and it used to be the Meadows, and I agree with
So how
that.
did the Meadows then benefit from selling?
They didn't have to
It was a
maintain.
it was a private water company.
I think they were getting ready to sell right at that point.
Yeah, it was a,
And it was a terrible system. We continually had low pressure, pipes were breaking, and when they'd come out to fix, City of Willard had just bought it, the city would have to come out to fix pipes and replace an entire structure because it was so undersized and never maintained.
so I can see those residents that have lived there 30 years and everything like that. Yeah, it was a private Meadow system, but 2008's a long time ago,
I agree.
you know? So it's probably been the city of Willard longer than it was the Meadows. I'm not sure about that, but I don't know how long the Meadows has been there. I'm a short timer,
It's
so.
been
It was
Meadows
the-
for,
It
I
was
mean, I
like
think
back in
we
the
need to have
80s.
conversations with our constituents, obviously, to,
At least since May.
you know, see what their feelings are and.
How true.
I'm with Joyce, I'd love to see what the, numbers are if we just did straight across
straight
the
across
board.
everybody.
I'd like to see that number.
I'd like to see straight across the board, and then, again, you know, if 10% is acceptable between in town and out of town, then run the rates on that with the 10%.
Acceptable to who?
If that's what, or whatever
That's what it currently is now.
We did a 10% back in the.
Yeah, it's just under 9.63, I believe.
I mean, on Republic or Mixer, I mean, all of those entities that have in-town and out-of-town rates, what's the variance between in and out of town? If it's 22%, then 22% is the going.
I couldn't find the new current.
Yeah, if we started with a basis of a flat rate, and then went and looked at an outside community and what their differential is, and apply that in this situation, that would be fair.
Yeah, but you heard them sit there and say that we don't care what Nixon, Republic, and everybody else does.
Well, I mean,
We just are trying to get
in the
a
heat of
base.
the moment, we've gotta make
realistic
some,
than
we've
that.
gotta make something fair here.
50% is not fair in any regard. If I lived over there, I'd be raising hell
I'd be
too.
raised, I'd be storming.
We've had a 10% differential in place since '08. Whatever number that year it is, 14 to 16.
We didn't
And-
start seeing a differential until potentially 15 or 18.
Really? Okay, that's when.
Yeah, and 12 rates were the same across the board.
Okay, when 16?
13 rates were the same across the board, and then we jumped to 18 and 15. So there's a rate difference there.
So we've been doing it for a number of years.
Correct, and that's what I'm
Not a long
saying.
time, but a number of years, and that's been acceptable. So the question is, what is a reasonable differential? Is it 10? Is it 15? You can shop every town in southwest Missouri. You can shop 100 towns, you'll have 100 different numbers.
What is it in Stratford?
Stratford was, when I left, probably around 15%.
Okay, so 10 to 15.
CU is about 15%. I think somebody quoted that.
So
didn't they?
15
City
maybe,
utilities.
like the more
Let's go 12 and a half.
average
Let's
rate.
just,
So,
Shoot it right in the middle, Joyce.
you've
But
got
do we
a
just
little
look at the
differential
local
there
communities
for
and take the
inside and
average
out.
of, you know, if Springfield's 50 and Stratford's 15 and, I don't know,
Yeah.
Nixon's 8, do we just
Well, the
average
average.
them and say we're just keeping competitive with our peers?
Jeremy
Take a look
brings
at
up a
population
point here
ratio.
that you could belabor yourself altogether. The Meadow system, this is a personal opinion, when the city of Willard bought it, they bought two good wells and a 500,000 gallon elevated storage water tower. The distribution system was undocumented, undersized, poor quality material, a lot of ACM pipe out there today. If you dig it up and look at it, it'll break, just quote, look at that.
That's just cool.
So you've got a lot of cost there that takes a long time to try to explain to everybody that, yes, there is cost for that service down there. Now, anything we have added, or a developer which hasn't, a developer added, that would be adequately engineered and sized and appropriate material. But what you got on now is kind of a shoestring.
Yes.
And the only way you can remedy that is through development, where a developer who needs size, capacity, is gonna be on the hook to provide that as part of his development plan. So, for just maintenance and fixing the stuff that happens, yeah, it's a little more expensive out there. It's mileage, you're fighting brush, you're in pastures, and many times if you can find it, there's a good point. There's been a lot of work done the last 2 years in potholing out there just to figure out where the pipes are, because there's no documentation. No easements.
And they talk about easements, I mean, they were running it right through the middle of fields, there's no easements.
So what would you guys prefer then? That Wes come up with a couple different numbers and we put it on the agenda for next meeting and hash those numbers out? Is that what you guys wanna do?
Yeah, and I mean, like I said, we have to come to the same end game,
So
so.
I think the thing we'll get there, we might wanna do maybe a work study or something earlier than that. We likely gonna need to do a new public hearing if we're gonna change the numbers. So we'll need to publish it and have the right amount of time and.
Put it on the bills?
But you guys can go ahead and talk about the numbers. We can overestimate the numbers. We'll put a higher number in the notice, we can come down from that.
28.
As long as people know we're gonna come down from that, so we're not like, what are you doing?
So with it being on the 28th,
I'm gonna pitch for it.
we're not gonna have 14 days to publish, so I think we have to do.
30-day publication.
Oh, 30 days, oh, wow.
Nate, don't you think this constitutes a valid public hearing, and anything you do that would reduce rates would be within the concept of
It's
this
not gonna
public
reduce
hearing?
Yeah, but if we raise one to reduce the other, then it's gonna be higher than
Yeah,
Well,
what we
that
publish.
takes some
I think.
accounting.
You're gonna be looking, and I'm just baselining. But
Yes,
I
you can
think
always go
it'll
down.
be 50-50, so in city will go up more.
And one thing you have here that's a little bit of an issue, if you look at the customer counts on water, is about, in town is I'm just rounding it up here, 2,000. Out of town's 1,000. So you got 1/3 of your water customers not within the city limits. When you look at the sewer customers, that reduces down to 10%.
There's not many in there.
So,
Well, you do need to look at too, I don't know who was speaking about sewer on the north, I don't remember where she said. north of the
highway.
town.
Yeah, it's
Trying to get familiar with the city, but it's if you ever annex that, you've got, unless it's, I forget how the impractical language is worded, but you're supposed to be able to provide services within 3 years to that annexed area, so.
on an involuntary annexation.
Yeah. Yes, I mean, they could agree to annexation, but I think that's what was kind of in this, was to get people to agree and they'd get, but.
But that's a balance act, because you have to annex, but then someone's gotta pay the cost to run a gravity main and serve it.
And then the capacity cost, I mean, that's really what's holding it up. We could run pipe all day long, there's just no capacity.
That lift
in the
station's
lift
too-
station.
Yeah,
And that one
we're working on maybe updating the impellers in there, but I think it would just take care of.
Well, I think that's part of the plan I saw was, I mean, that's upgrading pipe and a bunch of stuff.
It should be in there.
And B is upgrading the pump capacity and the discharge pipe
Yeah.
capacity. Because you can put impellers on it all day, and it's still not gonna flow it.
So the hangup is B, because B pumps into 94, correct?
I think
Regional,
B
yeah.
goes
B
to
pumps into
regional,
regional, and regional goes 94, but regionals,
which
for
kind of
now,
means you're double
not
handling
bad.
it, which is
You're saying
added
you could upsize
cost.
the impellers there and get another 200 CFM,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, but the
Yeah.
200 CFM
Just
is
don't
just
have
gonna
it.
cover what we're already probably over pumping to B anyway. We're just fixing what we already have. I don't think we're gonna unlock capacity with impellers. We're gonna have it, it's gonna take something more substantial. I think the Cochran talked about a force main from B to 94, which I think is really gonna be the only logical way to
That,
fix it.
that's a very expensive per unit
Oh, yeah.
gain
Yeah.
if you're going all the way to 94 with it.
Oh, yeah.
And that's why, if you talk to Albert Martin, we was looking at doing one stretch of force main where it's gravity system that goes to regional.
Mhm.
Cut down the amount of pipe that has to be.
Yeah, if you're going forced, you can-
Pardon?
if you're doing forced, you can go any direction, so.
But with that, I mean, you only have a certain amount of capacity in regional, so how much are you really gonna unlock for the
Yeah.
banquet? Yeah, we talked about that a little bit too.
Alright, let's
The growth
let's
of
go
the
on
system.
to item number 10, any unfinished business. Nothing, anybody? Then item number 11,
I make a motion to recess the open session and move into closed session pursuant to RSMO section 610.021 legal pursuant to RSMO section 610.021, number 3, personnel.
Holly would be so proud of you.
Wouldn't she?
Holly would be so proud
I
of
will second that motion.
you. So be it.
Okay, we have a first and a second. Alderman Villiers. Yes. Alderman Hill.
Yes.
Alderman Key.
Yes.
Alderman Lancaster.
Yes.
Alderman Swatosh.
Yes.
And Alderman Wilson.
Yes.
Thank you.
And now motion to close the open session.
Now,
I make a motion that we close the open session and adjourn the meeting.
Second.
we're ready to go. Okay. Alderman Villiers. Yes. Alderman Hill.
Yes.
Alderman King.
Yes.
Alderman Lancaster.
Yes.
Alderman Swatosh.
Yes.
Alderman Wilson.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. That was